matchup, which is Janice Lee and Riley Factura. Two more incredible battlers in the Florida VGC area. First up, we're going to start with our player Janice Lee, and her team is one of the coolest teams that we have seen around here, ladies and gentlemen. She is running the Rillaboom with loaded dice and bullet seed, ladies and gentlemen. You are reading that correctly. Bullet seed, loaded dice to guarantee 4 hits minimum with that bullet seed. And then adding in the Torkoal with the Choice Specs plus the Eruption. She has a Comfey with Triage that will make Floral Healing do more healing as the grassy terrain is up with Trick Room to activate that Torkoal. Meanwhile, Riley Factura, what more is there to be said about Riley, ladies and gentlemen? He has been on an absolute tear in the 2024 season. He is currently the North American Masters points leader entering this MSS today, and he is bringing a Pokemon that he is very fond of, most notably his mascot, which is that King Gambit, and he's also got his Amoonguss with him today, alongside an Urshifu Rapid Strike, a Raging Bolt, a Chen Pao, and an Ogerpon Hearth Flame. This is going to be a very, very amazing matchup, ladies and gentlemen, between two of the best players that we have to offer in the state of Florida. And will Riley be able to move his way to 2-0, or will Janice pick up a early upset over an early favorite in the Nerdy Needs Mid-Season Showdown? It is going to be a very impressive lead from both sides, and honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I am excited to see these two trainers go and fight to get that 2-0 and move one step closer to that top cut. And honestly, looking at their teams, once again, I mean, we saw the Rillaboom with that bullet seed loaded dice strategy, and honestly, Janice having that Annihilate too. So both Pokemon, or both teams actually having a Pokemon with the Defiant ability to take advantage of any potential Intimidate user, such as the Hisuian Arcanine, the Incineroar, or the Landorus Therian. But also, Defiant does work on any stat-lowering natures, but we do see Janice leading with the Comfey and the Ogerpon Wellspring, and Riley leading with the Amoonguss and the Ogerpon Hearth Flame. So both Ogerpons have started this battle on the field, ladies and gentlemen, and it is going to be a very impressive first turn on this battle, because Comfey with its Triage ability means that Draining Kiss, Floral Healing, and Synthesis all have +3 priority by virtue of that ability. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. But we do see Riley activate the Terra Orb on the first turn. Ogerpon terastallizes, and the Hearth Flame Mask just powers up and goes big as Ogerpon loses its grass typing and becomes a pure fire type. As we see Ogerpon go for the Follow Me here, and now that Ogerpon is going to potentially take a +1 Ivy Cudgel. This is a neutral hit into the Ogerpon Wellspring here, and it does enough. That is a one-hit knockout on the Ogerpon Wellspring, and suddenly Janice is down one Pokemon as we do see a Spore come out, and because the Ogerpon did go down, the Comfey goes to sleep. That is an amazing play on Riley's side, getting that turn 1 terastallization off on the Ogerpon Hearthflame, taking out Janice's Ogerpon in one shot and activating the Spore onto the Comfey. What a play just now, ladies and gentlemen, as Janice brings in her Rillaboom next to potentially activate the Grassy Surge, which will allow Floral Healing to heal 2/3 of Rillaboom's health every time it's clicked, alongside that +3 with the Triage. But we do see Amoonguss is packing the Clear Smog as it tries to go for a potential Spore into the Rillaboom, maybe potentially scouting for a Fire Terra on the Rillaboom here, as Comfey was forced to take its one turn guaranteed of sleep by virtue of potentially going for a move such as Trick Room on that turn. Meanwhile, Janice comes out and uses the Fake Out on the Ogerpon, and Ogerpon flinches and cannot move. Amoonguss going for the Clear Smog into the Rillaboom. This does big damage, and it's super effective, and all stat changes were eliminated, but Comfey stays asleep for another turn. And Ogerpon getting its health back from the grassy terrain, much like the Rillaboom is as well. And Riley looking to potentially go after that Comfey here, ladies and gentlemen, realizing that Comfey is one of the strongest Pokemon on the field by virtue of that ability Triage being +3, as Janice activates her Terra Orb and Rillaboom comes out with a fiery chandelier over its head, indicating that it has turned from a grass type into a fire type. Much like its old partner in Infernape, we now have another Fire Monkey on the field as Ogerpon goes for the Ivy Cudgel into the Comfey, and it is once again a one-hit knockout. And Rillaboom goes for the high horsepower, and it does enough, and the Ogerpon goes down. So Riley's Terra Pokemon has gone down. Ogerpon is finally off the field. Meanwhile, Amoonguss goes for the Clear Smog into the Rillaboom. This does not do much damage now because it is a neutral hit instead of super effective, but the most important factor is that the Amoonguss is gone. Not the Amoonguss, the Ogerpon is gone. And we do see Raging Bolt come out on the side of Riley Factura and the Torkoal coming out here. And that is going to be unfortunate for Janice as the Drought on her Torkoal activates Raging Bolt's Protosynthesis. And now this Raging Bolt is suddenly one of the strongest Pokemon on the field with that special attack activated even further by the Protosynthesis. And Rillaboom going for the high horsepower into the Raging Bolt does big damage into the Raging Bolt as it goes for the Thunderbolt into the Rillaboom. Does enough with the Protosynthesis, and Rillaboom goes down. And meanwhile, remains to be seen, is Torkoal going to be faster than the Amoonguss? The Amoonguss is not going to be slower than that Torkoal because Trick Room is not up, and Torkoal goes to sleep. So now with Torkoal getting its one guaranteed turn of sleep, this would potentially allow Riley to get off a possible Pollen Puff if he was carrying it onto the Raging Bolt. However, he is running his signature Grass Knot set on the Amoonguss today, ladies and gentlemen. So this Torkoal would potentially need to wake up on this first turn as Raging Bolt goes for that Thunderbolt. Almost kills the Torkoal in one shot, but the double up from the Amoonguss with the Clear Smog does enough. Torkoal goes down, and Riley Factura gets an early 1-0 victory over Janice Lee in game number 1 with an amazing Ogerpon bonk on its fellow Ogerpon. It remains to be seen what is going to happen in game number 2 here, ladies and gentlemen, but looking back at game number 1, Rillaboom coming in and being able to take out that Ogerpon, while Riley was able to force the Terrestrialization on Janice's side, letting Ogerpon go down there was a very big play because it allowed for the Torkoal to come in potentially with no Trick Room activated, and thereby allowing Torkoal to be the slowest Pokemon on the field, thereby forcing it to take that Spore and be put to sleep by Riley Factura's Amoonguss. And we didn't even see King Gambit come on Riley's side, which is a very interesting side of things on Riley's team because his Pokemon are really strong all throughout, as are Janice's Pokemon here. And honestly, Comfey, by virtue of Trick Room being such negative priority, it did leave the Comfey vulnerable to a Spore after Ogerpon was one-hit knocked out by Riley's Ogerpon by virtue of that Hearth Flame Mask, giving Ogerpon a +1 to its attack and hitting neutrally into the Ogerpon Wellspring, because by virtue of Ogerpon not terrestrializing, it kept its grass typing, which allowed it to be a neutral hit as opposed to a resistant hit with the water. However, by follow meing that the Spore from the Amoonguss into the Ogerpon, it actually would have been put to sleep if Janice had terrestrialized her Ogerpon, because grass types are immune to Spore, as we are well aware about. However, by losing that grass type, it would then be put to sleep. So it remains to be seen, what will Janice do to potentially force a game number 3 against Riley Factura here? Will Riley be able to win game number 2 and move to 2-0 at the Nerdy Needs Midseason Showdown? The battle is about to get underway, ladies and gentlemen, and we are ready to see what is going to happen here. Janice making a little bit of a switch up here as she is leading the Ogerpon and the Rillaboom instead of Ogerpon and Comfey. Meanwhile, Riley uses the same lead that he did last time, the Ogerpon Hearthflame and the Amoonguss. And now with Janice potentially having the Ogerpon out, this does allow for a potential fake out into something like the Amoonguss here instead of going into the Ogerpon here, but it's also making Riley decide whether or not he wants to risk that terrestrialization now. Because Rillaboom, by virtue of it having high horsepower, that is a very big play for Rillaboom to have in its back pocket against a Pokemon such as Ogerpon Hearthflame, which is currently a grass fire type, so this would be a neutral hit unless it terrestrializes, which might be Janice's play here, as Ogerpon goes for the spiky shield here. Rillaboom going for the fake out into the Amoonguss, and Ogerpon going for an Ivy Cudgel into the Ogerpon Hearthflame, but it is protected and thereby nullified damage. But the Amoonguss does flinch by virtue of the fake out. So now Riley is thinking long and hard about what he wants to do on this turn, as is Janice thinking about what she wants to do. Does she want to potentially keep that Rillaboom around, or does she want to go for a terrestrialization? But we do see Riley once again activate his Terror Orb and fling it at his Ogerpon, and Ogerpon's mask once again becomes imbued by the terrestrial energy and maximizes its power. And the Embody aspect is activated on the side of Ogerpon and gets that attack boost. And Janice also decides to activate her Terror Orb as well and flings it at her Rillaboom. And Rillaboom becomes a fire type, much like Ogerpon does. However, by virtue of Rillaboom becoming a fire type, it now is susceptible to any Rage Powders by virtue of the Rage Powder working against a fire type such as that Rillaboom now instead of Grass type. As Ogerpon goes for the Ivy Cudgel into the Ogerpon Wellspring. This is a protecting move, a spiky shield for a spiky shield. And Rillaboom goes for the high horsepower, but it misses the Amoonguss. That is a big miss on Rillaboom. That is an amazing miss just now. Rillaboom does not do any damage on that turn. So now it remains to be seen what is going to happen here, as now Janice's Rillaboom is susceptible to those Rage Powers, as we just saw on that last turn, by virtue of it being a fire type, and therefore it couldn't do a high horsepower into the now weak to ground type Ogerpon Hearthflame. This is going to be an incredible play by Riley or Janice. We have to see what is going to happen here, ladies and gentlemen, because this is madness. As you see, Janice opt to switch out her Rillaboom here and brings in her Comfey. So Comfey comes out onto the field here, and Amoonguss going for the Rage Powder. However, because Ogerpon did not terrestrialize, Ogerpon can go for the Ivy Cudgel here, but Riley's Ogerpon is faster, and it goes into the Ogerpon Wellspring. And just like in the first game, that +1 Ivy Cudgel does enough to knock out the Ogerpon Wellspring in one hit. And Janice going into the Rillaboom once again, ladies and gentlemen. However, it remains to be seen what that Comfey could do here, because Comfey really can't do much in this turn. It doesn't feel like. By virtue of it having the Draining Kiss, it will do damage, but it will be resisted by both the Amoonguss and the Ogerpon Hearthflame here. However, it could go for a potential Trick Room if Torkoal is potentially in the back. And Ogerpon opts to go for the Ivy Cudgel once again. It goes into the Comfey. This is a +1. Does it do enough? It does again. Comfey goes down. A one-hit knockout. Ogerpon is bonking everything on the field. And the Rillaboom doesn't do enough to knock out the Ogerpon. Oh, are you kidding me? The Rillaboom did not do enough to knock out the Ogerpon. It is still alive and getting the grassy terrain recovery set up by the Rillaboom. And Janice's last Pokemon is that Torkoal once again, ladies and gentlemen. Activating the sun and further powering up this Ogerpon Heart Flames Fire-type moves alongside that +1 boost. An amazing play by Riley Factora just now. Going for the Stomping Tantrum into the Rillaboom does enough. Once again, a one-hit knockout, a critical hit too. A critical hit, super effective, knocking out the Rillaboom in one shot. Ogerpon, 3 knockouts on 1 hit. This is an amazing battle, ladies and gentlemen, as Amoonguss goes for the Spore, and Torkoal is still the slowest Pokemon on the field, and thereby goes to sleep. And now it stays asleep. It gets its 1 guaranteed turn of sleep. And Ogerpon getting that all-important recovery back from the grassy terrain. But that was the last turn of grassy terrain here, ladies and gentlemen. So all that remains now is this Ogerpon. Will it do enough? This is a +1 Stomping Tantrum into the Torkoal. Does not do enough for the one-hit knockout this time, ladies and gentlemen. However, Torkoal taking damage here. All stat changes were eliminated by the Clear Smog, and it stays asleep. So Torkoal does not do any damage in this battle, ladies and gentlemen. And Riley Factora has once again dominated on his way to a 2-0 victory over Janice Lee, moving to 2-0. And much like previous iterations, the Ogerpon just kept hitting those Ivy Cudgels and bonking things in the head all the way to a dominant 2-0 victory over Janice Lee. And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, that was just an insane battle from both Pokemon, from both trainers just now. Riley playing into that Amoonguss and Ogerpon Hearthflame, not really needing any of his Pokemon in the back. He had Raging Bolt in game number 1 to potentially help him out, and actually did do some damage by getting that Thunderbolt with the Protosynthesis on the special attack. But Janice honestly couldn't break the Ogerpon and the Amoonguss lead. That was an amazing play by Riley Factora. But we never even got to see the Rillaboom use the loaded dice bullet seed strategy, which would have been really cool to see, ladies and gentlemen. As for the rest of Janice's team, I mean, the Ogerpon Wellspring being neutral instead of weak to, or not, being neutral instead of being resisting on the Ivy Cudgel, that might have done some big help for Janice's side. However, the potential of getting spored into that Ogerpon would have done more harm than good, it felt like, because by Ogerpon redirecting that Follow Me, which is a difference from Rage Powder in the sense that Follow Me will redirect any grass type move such as a Rage Powder or a Spore into the Ogerpon slot, it wouldn't be able to keep the Rillaboom alive, potentially, because Riley could have easily went into an Ivy Cudgel, into a Rillaboom switch, and on that Comfey. But honestly, ladies and gentlemen, that was an incredible battle here, and we do have Riley Factora here, ready for a winner's interview. We do have Riley. He is right over here. He is joining us right now on stream. Riley, good to see you, brother.
Good to see you, too.
Honestly, that was a very impressive battle just now that you guys just had.
Oh, thank you.
I gotta ask, the Ogerpon Hearthflame and the Amoonguss, what was the reasoning to lead those in both games?
I looked at her team, and I saw that she basically had no answers to it unless her Wellspring was going to outspeed, but I didn't think she was going to outspeed it. So it just put the most pressure on the entire team no matter what she did.
Now, did you know that your Ogerpon would be able to knock out her Ogerpon in one hit if you terastallized?
They have to be, like, really, really bulky, so most Ogerpons don't live that hit. So I just figured, you know, it'll probably KO, and if it doesn't, it'll do a lot of damage.
That's understandable. And, I mean, honestly, her team was really fun. Just looking at it on the team sheet, I mean, when you looked at that Rillaboom, I'm very curious, and you saw Loaded Dice and Bullet Seed. I gotta know your thoughts on that. What were your thoughts when you saw it? You were just like, am I reading this correctly? Because this is awesome.
It's kind of interesting. I was playing Showdown on the way to the tournament, and I saw Loaded Dice, Ogre Pond, the grass Ogre Pond.
Loaded Dice, Teal Mask Ogre Pond.
Yeah, they didn't have Ivy Cudgel. I thought that was interesting, but the Rillaboom makes sense because you don't take recoil from Woodhammer. So yeah, I think it could be good in some situations.
You're definitely right on that. And also, by virtue of you knocking out the Ogre Pond in one shot, that allowed for your Amoonguss to potentially put that Comfey to sleep every time and thereby negating Trick Room. Yeah. Did you know that did you have a feeling that she would have Torkoal in the back in both games?
I planned for it to happen in case it did, but I also planned for it to not come in just in case she didn't bring it.
That's understandable. And then, of course, in game number 1, you're Raging Bull. When you came in, gets the photosynthesis boost, you were probably just like, well, thank you, sun. I mean, we're in Florida, so, you're already in the sun 24/7. It's like, sun? Well, we have that. Rain? Not really. I mean, they say rain, but we don't know about rain. Sand? Well, we're not the desert. And snow? What are we? And did Arceus come and finally give us snow? I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know on that part. But honestly, Riley, you are the top player in the North American and the Masters leaderboard right now. What is your goal leading up to the World Championships in Honolulu this year? Are you looking more ahead to like what the format is going to be in Regulation G, or are you just trying to keeping on with your mascot King Gambit?
Well, right now I'm actually I think 6th place in the travel stipend for North America, the NAAC. So I got passed by a lot of people. So I need to do well at these local tournaments and hopefully EUIC, so I can slide back into the top 4. But yeah, overall for the world, it's cool to be 1. I don't know how long it's gonna stay, but the plan is just to go to as many tournaments as I can and play optimally and have fun because I love the game. So I'm just doing it for the love of the game.
Well, that's the best part about it. Is just having fun and getting good battles against some really good trainers. Because we don't know what's going to happen in the lead up to Vancouver. We have Vancouver coming up. We have, as you said, EUIC. It's really Vancouver, EUIC, Orlando, and then Regulation G starts up with Indianapolis in May, and we still don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know. We have thoughts, but we just don't know officially until, let's see, if I check my calendar here and add the 5, we'll probably find out like 2 days before. And then oh, great, 2 days to learn a new format.
Yeah, I really hope it's dual restricted. I know most people want or are predicting a 1 restricted format, but I feel like that's going to be more match roulette, and it's like one Pokemon on the team is going to be like absurdly stronger than all the others. While I think the dual restricted makes up for a more skill-based playstyle instead of more like luck-based.
If you had to choose right now for, let's just say, single restricted, and we'll just use it from the Scarlet and Violet Pokemon, Koraidon or Miraidon, which one would you pick?
I don't know which one's which, but whatever the electric Dragon one is.
That would be Miraidon.
Okay, Miraidon, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it with our winner interview, Riley Factura. Once again, thank you for coming on, Riley, and we will be back to you guys with round number 3 when we know that pairing. Stick around, guys, at the Nerdy Needs Video Game Mid-Season Showdown.